Aloha and good day. This is Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate, broadcasting on the KAOI radio group at 7 a.m. on Monday. The stations at KAOI are 1110 AM, 98.7 FM, 96.7 FM, and 95.5 FM. You can also listen to the show anytime at one of our podcasts at mauirealestateradio.com. There and this and many other shows are available that cover a wide variety of topics. So definitely check that out for all things Maui. We're not just real estate. Today we have a special guest. We have Scott Lacasse. Is that right? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Lacasse.
And he's the director of Grow Some Good. He's a wonderful organization here on Maui that reaches out to, foster the process of good old earth and growing. Most of the stuff that I know about, of course, having kids is, the gardening that they do at the schools. But from my understanding, it goes far beyond that. Tell us a little about what you guys do and where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Clint. I appreciate your time. Grow Some Good is a unique organization in Maui. It started off as a volunteer group back in 2008. And they were asked by or approached by a teacher at one of the schools in Kihei to help educate students in a garden bed outside of this one particular teacher's classroom. And pretty soon that evolved into 2 schools, 3 schools, 4 schools. And by 2015, the organization became a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And in 2019, we merged with the Maui School Garden Network, which was also helping other schools all across Maui County. They're also part of a larger Hawaii Farm to School network at the state level as well. So once that merger took place, Grow Some Good absorbed quite a few different schools, and we began to impact about 35 schools and around 8,000 students in a normal year. So that's really kind of the quick history of the organization and how it got started and how it's evolved into what it is today. Now we have 13 staff members, obviously an executive director, fundraising marketing manager, bookkeepers, and of course our garden coordinator staff, which is just the heart of the organization. And I'm also pleased to announce we just hired a new program manager, Havila Mills, and she comes to the organization with a wealth of experience, basically teaching students at schools. She was a garden coordinator for a number of years, and she comes from a background of nonprofit management in a community garden organization on the mainland.
Okay, so this is really important. I know that Maui specifically and all of Hawaii is trying to become, more independent and having to deal with the resources from the mainland less. So being, a little bit more self-sustainable here requires us to produce more of our own goods. And of course, starting with one of the longest growing seasons anywhere in the world, from my understanding, with our stable weather pattern, it's a really great opportunity. And of course, we have to start more foundational level and teach the kids. So getting them involved is really important to be impassioned about gardening. How do you guys do that at your program? I mean, where did it, I can hear there's definitely a lot of people who are passionate, but how do you really engage the children?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it starts off, keeping it really simple. What does it take to create change in society, and looking at any topic, in any sector. And really it starts off with an awareness. If people aren't aware about what's taking place in a particular area, then they're not necessarily going to make conscious changes to, move that issue forward in society. So with Grow Some Good, one of our primary target audiences is elementary school kids, and we're also moving towards ECE, which is early childhood education. And the idea there is, an age-appropriate exposure to their connection to the land so that they develop a relationship. Because when you look at it, really our relationship to food is the most basic relationship we have to the environment. And if you can generate that awareness and appreciation of that connection to the land and to their food, and carry that on in some way, in an age-appropriate way throughout their developing years, it really sets us up for a culture or a society that values, their connection to agriculture and is aware the problems with the system, the food system as it is right now. And also the idea is to educate them. The knowledge comes at some point, technology is always changing, but to educate them about these processes, create that interest so that no matter where they go, we're not trying to create, turn everybody into a farmer. That's not everybody's deal. It's a hard
I don't want to hear
life.
this. I want to be a farmer. I was planning on quitting here. All right. But
Yeah, well, I can
I'm
connect
looking
you.
for that opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, I can totally connect you to some people that'd be willing to bring you on, and you let me know how that goes. It's definitely a challenge. So, when we're looking at what the kids are going to be when they grow up, if they want to be the next generation of policymakers or scientists or writers, journalists, real estate agents, it doesn't really matter. The idea is that if they have that awareness and appreciation and they carry that through and it becomes part of who they are, then they're going to make decisions based on that for better nutrition, hopefully for themselves, better nutrition for their families. It's amazing when kids are the drivers behind change. Adults sort of stand up and take notice, when they're in the room and they're talking about it.
And I mean, I think for me, it's a lot easier to stomach vegetables and fruits when I'm growing them myself. I go to the store, I'm not thinking about, getting avocados and tomatoes and things of that nature, but we actually have a little farm in Olinda, just perfectly right at the 3,000-foot level. And we have oranges, we have 16 beds that we grow a whole variety of things like baby bok choy. Tomatoes grow incredibly well up there. I've started a few avocado trees. It's like I have this like almost dwarf avocado tree that really is incredible. It gets these avocados and I'll pluck one every once in a while, and it seems to be like the never-ending supply of them. So most avocado trees I've come across, you go through the season, they all drop off, and you're without it. I'll pull one off over the course of like a 6-month period, and they just stay perfectly waiting for me to pluck them to ripen up. So I really enjoy eating greens when it's something I created myself as opposed to going out there and shopping for it. And yeah, I think having that connection to the land has really followed through with my kids. And they go to Carden Academy, which they have their own individual program there. They don't do it through Grow Some Good, but yeah, I really appreciate all the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, see, you are a farmer already, so you didn't. It's not a major career change, and I think it starts off, even like you said, just having a garden in your backyard, or even a tree. It can be that simple, or just a pot with a chard plant in it. It's so empowering to go out to your porch, and cut off some fresh herbs from whatever your container you're growing them from, or to go out in your garden, and it just makes it all that much better. And you're absolutely right. When children grow the food, they are far more inclined to try things. I was a living resource classroom teacher at the Montessori School of Maui for about 7 years, and I worked with age groups from pre-K all the way through eighth grade. And it was amazing. We had a noni tree, and I could actually get kids to at least try the noni, even how it smells.
Oh my
And
goodness, are you kidding me?
no, not at all. The reactions
Noni
are
is a no-no
fantastic.
for Mimi.
Yeah, it's a pretty special plant for a number of reasons, but that
Yeah, the
just goes to
medicinal stuff.
show. Yeah, that just goes to show that if you engage them at young ages and you just kind of introduce these things and make it fun, and it's not about doom and gloom about that age. We have to fix our food system, otherwise we're not going to make it.
Why weren't you there for me when I was a kid? Noni, like I said, is but tell me about it, because the noni I've tried was this disgusting fermented business, and I have no idea. Is it supposed to taste better than gross?
No, no, it's definitely acquired. No, it's something that's very, very much acquired, and you just start off with little bits, and you just kind of
Okay.
feel it, and it's a sensual experience. You can
Hmm.
almost feel it effervesce in your mouth and clean all the bacteria.
Oh wow.
I've known people that have made vegan blue cheese out of noni because it has that,
Ooh.
that scent to it, and it's been really successful. So yeah, don't try it again, give it another shot, look up some vegan noni blue cheese recipes, and maybe we can make you a convert. It's never too late.
Are you a vegan yourself, or are you an omnivore?
I consider, and my family consider ourselves whole food. So we look
Okay.
for the most sustainably sourced food, be it, meat, fish, but we're primarily, you know, herbivores for the most part. We look at those whole foods, try to cut back on oils, and if we do eat meat, it is a once a month sort of thing. It's in moderation and very, very small portions, which is all
Yeah,
we need.
I'm trying to turn that more into a delicacy myself. And, it's not really just for the health benefits. It's actually the main thing that I've been trying to do is, take care of the planet. We're just in such a a dire climate crisis right now. And what people really fail to realize is how impactful farming meat is to the environment. There was a recent study of 20 different poultry and beef facilities in Europe, and those 20 facilities created as much of a carbon footprint as all of France and Germany's industrial complex. And Germany is like from my understanding, the number one industrial complex in all of Europe. So it is no joke. I mean, I've tried to tell people and explain this, and I have an electric car myself, but honestly, vehicles and carbon pollution is a small pale in comparison to the greenhouse gases that are released from the animals. And the process of creating meat and feeding those animals is quite impactful in terms of land space for the amount of food that you're creating. And a very thing that you should consider is water consumption. Most people don't realize that every burger you eat takes about 330 gallons of water. And I mean, we're all like, oh, I'll make a quick 5-minute shower. No, no, you're not going to use anywhere near as much water compared to taking a shower as eating a burger. So definitely, treat meat as a delicacy if you can, something magical and special. And, get away from those thousands of grams of protein a week and try to just get that number back.
Yeah, I completely agree that, the studies are out. It goes to show, all we really need is just a little bit. And even then, it's been proven that, some of these top athletes are completely vegan, and I applaud them. That is definitely something that my wife and I worked on, and we were probably pretty successful for the most part for a couple of years. But then I went to grad school. We had a baby at the same time. I became, the director of a nonprofit. It's just, we just had a really hard time sustaining what we needed to do and meet our dietary needs. And that's not to say that it's that challenging, but we just didn't necessarily have, we weren't equipped with the tools to really have successful meal planning that was easy. A lot of great meal planning apps have come out that are specifically vegan now, and we use those, and that's really what helps us, maintain us closer to that. We stay away from dairy. It's just, these are all sort of personal decisions and choices that you have to make. But again, it starts with that awareness and the knowledge of listening to your body, of how your body responds to certain foods, and honoring that. And as you said, the climate crisis and agricultural's role in that is no joke, and it needs to be addressed fairly quickly, especially when we're looking at the limited reserves of water, both on our own island and nationwide. So it's a real concern.
Yeah, 2 minutes before midnight, and then midnight strikes, and it's all over. Once you hit the tipping point and the temperature of the planet increases sufficiently enough, the greenhouse gases that have been trapped underneath the permafrost start melting, and you get runaway global warming. And those greenhouse gases like ammonia nitrate, I think it is 10 times more reactive to the atmosphere.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason why animal production is such an influence on global warming and habitat destruction. So yeah, and not to put people off on meat altogether, there's a whole process. I mean, and having meat grown locally is a really important part of what Maui needs to do, and part of the diversified agricultural plan, at least that Maui's working on. So what is your opinion and connection to the new plan that they're trying to institute over the next decade?
At the state level or the county level? Are you talking about the new Department of Agriculture or?
Like that, but tell me about how you're incorporating, children, and also your opinion of the direction that we're going here on island.
Sure. Well, I think, one of the, if there's a silver lining to this pandemic, it is brightly illuminated. Um, Much of what many of us already knew is that broken food system in terms of, the local supply chain of, getting food that is locally produced to the retailers and to the people. And I think that a lot of things were accelerated. So, and what I mean by that is the initiatives in creating food hubs, Maui food banks, call to arms, and getting fresh produce from the local growers as soon as the resorts weren't purchasing that food anymore. How do we get it in the hands of folks that need it the most? Grow Some Good participated in that as well. We were able to harvest all the food from our school gardens and distribute those to families in need. So I think that again, starting off with the awareness, it has, really illuminated the crisis that we were in. Whether or not it continues along that road, I mean, it's hard to say. I'm hopeful. I'm seeing a lot more money being thrown at local agriculture and organizations like ourselves, because again, food is the most basic relationship we have, and it's absolutely necessary for survival. And at some point, technology is going to help mitigate the effects of climate change in terms of food production. I mean, it just will. Human beings are very adaptable and they're very clever, and to all this, obviously, sometimes to their own detriment. But at the same time, we can't rely and hope that technology is going to be the only answer that saves us all. It's going to play a role, and it has to come in form of a societal value shift and changes to our food systems. So I think, again, with that awareness, it's looking better. There's a call for more community gardens. Grow Some Good is participating in the creation of those community gardens, starting off at small scales, and then working at a little bit higher scales. So again, these are sort of the idea of pilot projects, proof of concept, seeing
Beautiful.
how engaged we can get the community in more of the central Maui area to start off with, these urban areas.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging. Is it going to happen quickly enough? I don't know.
Maybe we can get a school to try a process that incorporates aquaponics, so that the local lunches once a week are basically sourced from the gardens right on the school. I mean, big, bold projects like that show the proof of concept, and, engages us in, the whole process of where our food comes from, because, you can see the effort just one meal a week or one meal a month even can have. And things like that, and getting the kids to really feel the value of every morsel that is created is important, because we're on a very giant spaceship moving through the universe, and if something goes wrong, a large portion of the population is going to suffer. And that's the thing that people kind of fail to realize too. It's, when we talk about, oh, the end of the world, we got to save, global warming's coming. Oh no, humans will survive. It's just a question of how bad it's going to be and how many people are going to suffer. The coastal communities throughout the world, where the majority of the population are, and the floodplains where, a lot of the arid lands are. As sea level rises, as rainfall patterns change, it's going to be a very expensive and dramatic process that we go through. And, the climate models, see anywhere from, several million deaths that are already happening on a regular basis to, potentially hundreds of millions, if not significantly more than that. So, preparing for the future and realizing that that tipping point is coming and that we can make those changes. We have the time, we have the ability, and being smart about where we source our food is a very good key effort that we should continue to make. And starting with our kids is obviously the foundation.
Yeah, it really is. Just, the ability to, because we're an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the majority of the food in the globalized,
Yeah.
specialized industrial food system that we have on the mainland, the majority of that food travels 1,500 miles before it even, gets to anybody for the most part. And then you add in the Pacific Ocean, in our case. And so we're looking at 3,000 plus miles, and it goes to Honolulu and then gets barged over here. What is the nutrient value of that fresh produce at that point? Because it has to be packaged really early,
Yeah.
for it to make that journey. And oftentimes, I think we've all had the experience where we go to the store and we look and there's a bag of spinach and it looks delicious, and then the next day it's just toast. It's because it's traveled 4,000 miles to get here. So how do we reduce that mileage? And that is by purchasing local. But the real struggle is, the price of farmland in Hawaii is expensive, energy is expensive. We can
Mhm.
see, the struggles with water rights, even on Maui. That's an ongoing thing. Water is
Yeah.
in the public trust. It's protected by the state constitution. However,
Yep.
the conveyance of that water gets really complicated. It's owned by private entities. It's on
Mhm.
state leased land. It just brings a lot of different players into the mix and competing stakeholders. So we really need to look at specifically Maui, on East Maui. That's all surface runoff. I mean, what hits, if it doesn't get absorbed by an aquifer, whereas on West Maui, at least there's a little bit of an aquifer. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what the current level of that is yet, and I believe Kihei, I think that there's a basal lens there as well. But we really
Yeah.
need to start looking at, as an island, I think all of us can recognize that the weather patterns have changed drastically. I've been here for about 15 years, and I've seen it in 15 years. Just
Mhm.
these more frequent, intense rain events that are washing our arable soil off into the ocean, which is sedimenting our reefs and causing all kinds of problems. There
Mhm.
are, lots of different areas that require some intense focus when we're looking at scaling up agriculture, and it becomes a real systems problem, and it becomes very
Mhm.
complex in order to make a dent in it.
Water is a really a tenuous subject here on Maui and in Hawaii in general. It stems from the sugar trade back in the day and, the process of the illegal overthrow of Hawaii. And, the transfer of those water rights over those, generations that went by. And, there's a lot of water in Hawaii, but readily available cheap water from runoff and rivers, as you're mentioning, is what the more contentious point is. Because, if you're going to be drilling wells into the aquifers, that's significantly more expensive by comparison. And from my understanding, actually, I mean, with the water tables that are here in Hawaii, we actually have significantly more water available to us on Maui than even Oahu does. So supporting a larger population isn't really a problem at all. It's a question of infrastructure and cost and what we're willing to, absorb as a society. We could throw huge sums of money at, drilling wells and whatnot to, create more arid and farmable lands. But, at some point, how much are you going to pay, for a potato? $1,000, $100, $5? It's right now it's pennies on the dollar. And having that available water use is something that I don't think people really understand here in Hawaii. Also, some of the very smart things that I've seen golf courses do. Many of them think that that stems from those same runoff periods, and there are some courses that do. But the Old Blue, for example, here in Wailea, they actually have their own private well and they pull brackish water. So it's a very small salt content, but they're wise about their plant uses. You know, they use seashore grass, and that seashore is more salt tolerant, and you know, they can also avoid using lots of chemicals in order, you know, herbicides, not chemicals, fertilizers. I don't know about fertilizers, but I know they don't really use any herbicides. Instead, they can put salt down in order to treat you know, any of the other weeds that are there, and you know, crowd them out and create a more sustainable environment. So there are ways to think about and properly utilize the water resources that are here on Maui. And but I think, to me, the big conflict that I see with water rights coming up is, you know, people don't understand that if we're going to be self-sustaining, we need to have an equitable transfer of those into something that all of Maui benefits, you know, and realize that's not the water that we're drinking, that's the water that we're farming with. And to me, so many people seem to be angry with the whatchamacallit, what's the name of the new company that's on island here?
Oh, mahipono.
Yeah, mahipono. Thank you so much. They seem to be particularly upset with mahipono because of the transfer of those sugar right waters over to them. You know, we do have to realize there has to be, you know, a community compromise and process that we go through. And the more people that are aware of what they're doing and the net benefit to society, the better. And understand that obviously that there's some, you know, interests associated with not just the profitability of the farming there, but the overall land use. And we need to be invested in the processes and where that water is going. I've personally been very happy with what I've seen, and dividing the old landowners with the current landowners is something I think people confuse.
It's hard to say, you know, specifically. I'm not Hawaiian. I wasn't born here, you know, and I have to respect the, you know, the anger that is still there for their lands being taken from them.
Mhm.
I would feel the same, I'm sure. And with that water as well, and their traditional ways of subsistence farming, you know, kind of eradicated and taken away. So it's difficult to bring all these perspectives to the table, because there is a lot of emotion, and there's, you know, there's intergenerational pain there that
Yeah.
that needs to be addressed in a productive way. And I'm not sure, you know, what that would take. Um, I feel that there are people that are willing to come to the table and talk from that perspective. And it shouldn't be an either or situation. I think it is very much, let's get back to the idea of community. We are an island, you know, and if we, and as you had said before, you know, we're on this big blue marble floating through space, the spaceship. It's just a matter of scale, really, when you look at it. Maui is the sort of perfect little petri dish, test pot, microcosm of what the bigger Earth is. So
Mhm.
if we're able to have these conversations, bring, you know, diverse opinions to the table and work through those differences, find that common ground, and be able to move forward and recognize, you know, I think that healing hasn't taken place yet from the conversations that I've had. And that has to
Mhm.
be something that is addressed first and foremost before any real progress can be made. There's always going to be differences of opinion on how it should be used. But until that's really addressed, it's the elephant in the room, for sure. And I don't know, I feel strongly about that. So
And I think that's a good, that's true. It has to be an involved process on everybody's part, you know, and that's why involving the kids is so essential. And I think, you know, I think the Hawaiian community also needs to get as involved as possible in mahipono, to be, you know, apply for board positions, you know, try to be a part of the growing process, because it takes, you know, labor, effort, time, and passion to make these things happen. You know, with a lot of the different grow projects that are across Hawaii, I see great opportunity. I love the chocolate stuff that they're doing over on the west side. I
yeah.
mean, that has huge potential for, you know, creating a sustainable economy that is the core growth stems from Maui. I mean, the production and use of CBD and a variety of products is going to be, huge for, not having these big monocultures that are out there, and instead have a diversified ag plan that's going forward. So I love seeing these little farms, but the bigger farms, like Mahipono, they're not just sailing this alone. They're asking for applications and, how to use their land. How can we get you water? How can we get to use this land best? So, people need to be involved and reach out to these programs in order to make it better for tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, everything is at stake here. You have kids, I have a 3-year-old. Much of what I've read about the upcoming challenges that we're going to face with climate change, those are right around the corner in our lifetime, certainly, and it's going to be left to, our children to really get a handle on what to do and deal with the negative impacts and the negative feedback loops of, just these decades of ignoring the problem.
Yep.
And really, it is about educating them in a way, creating, creative thinkers, lifelong learners, people that are attached to the land that they live on, and recognize that they have a sense of stewardship and responsibility to maintain that. And it can't be put off on everybody else, like other organizations, Grow Some Good. And, we're happy to do the work. It's our public service. We're passionate about it. At the same time, it's going to take a lot more than just us, standing on our soapbox and engaging these programs. So,
I'd like to personally see, now I love what you guys do, obviously getting the kids involved, but one of the big pushes for Hawaii in general is a diversified, ag plan. It's also, a diversified job sources, not just to rely on the tourism industry. And if we can produce stuff, that's great. But there's great money that I'm seeing go into your program and other ag programs here on Maui, both from a state and county level. But I love STEM programs. I got to tell you, I love technology. And I personally would love to see a blending of, robotics and STEM with the Grow Some Good. I mean, this would be, to me, something that you guys should be reaching out to, because in addition to having additional funds available, the big issue that Hawaii has to deal with is labor costs. There's a limited amount of land. That limited amount of land bleeds down into the cost of living for everybody here in Hawaii. Obviously, we're on Maui Real Estate Radio, and I complain about that issue almost on every single show. And I think, in order to, be as efficient as possible and be smart about where we put the manpower is necessary to work in robotics into the process of creating and growing our food. And so to me, I'd love to see, STEM and Grow Some Good come together to like produce food for the schools, like one day a month, one day a week, something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in there, and we're sort of moving in that direction. We've had a little bit of success with garden to cafeteria programs where the food is grown in the garden and it's moved to the cafeteria. There's been a lot of changes in DOE administration in terms of food service. We've lost a couple champions in that area, so it feels like we're starting over a little bit with that. So that's definitely a challenge, but again, DOE is coming to the table. It looks like, hopefully we come up with some sort of a reasonable situation where we can start to get that food back into the school garden cafeterias. When you're talking about STEM and, the workforce, just a very big part of what we're trying to do is establish a viable P20 program. And so what that basically means is a contiguous sort of braided learning pathway from early childhood education all the way through high school, into college and into the workforce. And to make that happen, we're examining a pilot program in the Baldwin complex, where we're working with other partners to create additional intersession and after school programming. connecting curriculum so that it's scaffolded in an age-appropriate way through those different levels until ultimately it ends in the high school ag program at Baldwin High. And then from there, our other partners, UHMC, they have internship opportunities, they have money to get and resources to get interested students out into the field, working with drones, working with technology at that level. We're connected to MEDB STEMworks and Brittany, and we're trying to create other internships and support those aspects as well. So I think these things are happening. And when we're looking at this P20 after school intercession in school programming, from my opinion, I agree with you. As I said before, technology is going to play a critical role in the success and change of our food systems. It can't be what we completely rely on, but it has to be developed. And that's going to engage these kids. And if these kids are, have been engaged with agricultural learning in an age-appropriate fashion throughout most of their formative years, and then they start to get to that place in intermediate school where it becomes, okay, it's now time to start to look out from ourselves a little bit, start to tap into what's taking place in the community and how we can support that. And then when you get into high school, that's really where that takes place, and is in an age-appropriate fashion. So we're getting, that strength of their association with their connection to the land in whatever capacity they feel called to participate in, and moving that through that pilot program. So STEM is very much a big part of that. And I had a really cool conversation with a gentleman last Friday, and he has a experimental contraption. I haven't seen the drawings just yet.
Experimental contraption.
Contraption. It's the best I could go at. It was a 15-minute phone conversation. We were talking about something else, and he just started talking about it. And I said, "Oh wow, can we scale that and get that to schools?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll get the drawings to you, and we'll start to look at it." But the basic idea of it is looking at the transpirational pull of plants and studying that, and then also being able to measure through this contraption the carbon sequestration of that particular plant, through as it passes through the different cellular levels and then puts it back down into the ground. And he's found a way to somehow measure that and create experiment that can be distributed to schools and engage them in this project where they can actually measure the carbon sequestration of different plants.
Speaking of carbon sequestration, one of my favorite things is Char. I love Char. I think it's one of the best processes for growing and preventing a lot of those nitrates from getting into the atmosphere. And from my understanding is what you do is you get your green waste, which typically, like when things are going right now to the dump and they're getting ground in and turned into soils and breaking down, that breaking down process, creates nitrogens that get into the atmosphere. So when you actually, what's called char, you get the major woods and things of that nature, you toast them is the best way. And when you get that carbon shell and then around it, and then you bury it into the soil, as the process of those greens breaking down and creating fuel for the soil that's there, the carbon also captures the literal charcoal on the outside captures a lot of those in order to make it more readily available for the plants as it breaks down, and more importantly, preventing those very impactful greenhouse gases from getting out into the atmosphere. Because people don't understand that, yeah, carbon from your emissions is bad, but when methane gets into the atmosphere, it is 10 times more reactive than carbon, and there's a lot of it out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of great biological solutions to this carbon capture and carbon sequestration. Is it scalable? I mean, obviously the Amazon rainforest, it's our lungs. It's a real shame that's not being protected in the way that it needs to be, and we're all going to suffer for that. But yeah, the ecological and ecosystem services that our natural environment provides are, for the most part, really no cost or low cost. And then when you look at these technological implementations, they're going to require a tremendous amount of fiscal resources and time and who knows what to get them implemented. And there's always some kind of a cascading, negative unintended consequence associated with these different things. So yes, they're great. But yes, let's get back to regenerative soil, regenerative agricultural practices that, on their own individually, they don't sound like very much, but collectively, as economies of scale do, they can make a significant dent in, the health of an environment in a particular locale or region. And again, scaling back out to the planet, this big blue marble that we're all on. So.
Yeah. And one of the things that people 100% agree with you, the lungs, Brazil and everything down there is, the lungs of the world. But one of the things that people don't really understand about the whole dynamic is that when the process of slash and burn, it's not so much the killing of the plants and the lack of those plants filtering the air that's around us, it's the burning of those and letting them off into the atmosphere, which is most damaging. Because while there is a large portion of carbon sequestration that happens as a result of having those plants, and something that we should continue to do across the planet, preventing those carbon from escaping is more important, because the majority of the oxygen creation and carbon sequestration actually happens in the ocean, and with the algae that are in there, the big super duper crazy danger that people don't realize as part of this tipping point is when the temperature of the planet gets to a certain point and the acidification of the ocean is there because there's additional carbon in there. That carbon is fuel, and that fuel is going to grow an algae bloom, which will cover the oceans in a very dramatic fashion. And we're talking cataclysmic change in a ridiculously short amount of time. It just takes one little biological life form to grab onto that tipping point and bloom, like the red seas that are being created in Florida right now. Those temperatures are increasing the carbon level, and we're seeing basically toxic sludge created from these big algae blooms in Florida. You think that's scary? Wait until the whole ocean to start doing something like that.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I really hope that that people, hear the call to action and start to make some changes, and it has to happen at multiple levels. It's grassroots coming from the bottom up, which is really what we're about. But it's also, working with policymakers at state and federal levels, because that's, it has to happen at both ends. And I think, in terms of the governor's call to increase local food production, that's a great step in the right direction. There's been a lot of legislation passed to move that forward. And now it's everyone sort of complains, well, there's no plan. Well, that's kind of our role. Like we need to come up with a plan. They opened the door. Now we need to walk through the door, and it is our responsibility to do so. So rather than just, complain about there's no plan, let's all work together and come up with one. And that's easily said than done, because again, there are so many competing interests. And I do wonder in the face of this pandemic, and the polarization that's taken place in our society on vaccines, no vaccines, mask, no mask. This is in our face and directly affects people's lives and kills people right in front of us. And if that isn't enough for us as a society, as a global society, to start to band together and move forward, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to take.
I've been particularly surprised myself, because I've been a long member of the Republican Party, and I'm watching my party right now and a lot of the people that are in control of it. And I'm like, okay, I can see the hints of what we believe in, but the complete disregard of science and facts and the future. I mean, we're about planning, long-term planning and saving and fiscal responsibility and aiming down to the future. And I'm like, where did that all go? I'm like, instead it becomes talking points and tribalism. And we need to go away from the tribalism and be like, people, work together, get through this, focus on real issues, because we're talking not just a few million people dying from viruses. We're talking hundreds of millions here. You think this is a tragedy? Wait until the economic impact of tens of millions of people passing away on an annual basis from cataclysmic disaster and food shortages and things of that nature. There's real and serious sciences that need to be addressed. And to me, one of the most important tools in fighting this is money. We need money in order to, get people and put those efforts forward. So where does some of your funding come from?
We have a very diverse sort of funding portfolio. I mean, obviously, as a nonprofit, we go and we chase down grants, which, it's successful, non-successful. We get a lot of support from local foundations, and the most success from the foundations comes from a one-on-one relationship that's developed between those foundations, and they really go to bat for us. And so we've had a lot of really great success with that. Donor advised funds, again, through the foundations. Our longest standing contributor is the County of Maui. I'm very grateful. We're a $100,000 line item on the mayor's budget. It hasn't always been to that level. It started off at 12, it moved up to 25, moved up to 75. In the past 2 years, it's been 100. And we fight and demonstrate that the taxpayers' money is being used in a very, intentional way that's aligned with our program. And so we've been successful in hanging on to that funding. And honestly, it's really integral to the success of what we can do in our farm to school programs.
I think it's unacceptable that you have to have grant writers go out there and ask for money. I think people should be banging down your door to pay you, because that's like literally one of those foundational things to the future. So to me, is there like a part of your website that you can direct people to potentially donate?
Absolutely. You can just go to www.growsomegood.org, and right on the front of the page, there's a little donate square, and you can, whatever you feel called to do. No amount is too small and no amount is too large. That is for sure.
Well, that Jeff Bezos money. I mean, come on, let's let's get millions of dollars into these programs. I'd love to see more schools produce larger portions of their food. So like you said, it's a foundational principle that we need to learn, and kids are the future. If we get them to make this a part of the process and understand the importance of it, go away from this long chain of processed food and really see the value of producing and growing our own food, making it more process oriented, technologically based, and funding is a big part of that. Like I said, money. It is the most important tool in any of this, because labor crisis here is a real thing. Land values are through the roof. Costs of living are just dramatic. And if we can lower those costs in small part by producing locally grown foods and being smarter about how we utilize our land, this is the very root of everything. Funny play on words there, root. And grow some good. So I mean, I would love to see you guys get dramatically more funding. I mean, I think it's necessary to create a future of Maui that I want to live in, and I want to see a better tomorrow. And I really appreciate all that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. The funding, it is as you said, it's an important and critical tool. We do have, like I said, other great partners other than just foundations and grants, the individual donors, the many foundations. McKenna Golf and Beach Club has really stepped up and helped us in a really big way for South Maui school gardens. So that's been, we're very grateful for that. As I mentioned, County of Maui. Jeff Bezos did contribute to our organization.
Go Jeff!
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, in a big way. So that helps create that foundation that's just been lacking, and that ability to plan accordingly and make sure that we're meeting our mission. So it's a combination of efforts, and these funders are a part of the solution, and it's a partnership with them. It's not just handing out, our hands out saying, hey, please fund us. We need money for our salaries. Although, honestly, our staff is incredible and they need to be paid a living wage, and be respected for the educators that they are. Yeah. it doesn't go very far. So there's so much of that. So I mean, and it doesn't all happen in a vacuum. It takes partnership with other organizations. We have fantastic partners that we're working with and that we've developed even through this pandemic. And we're really looking forward to what the future holds with them. You'd mentioned Kuya Chocolate. They've been an incredible supporter of our organization, and we're directly tied to them. And we had a little bit of a window. We had an event at their facility and with the chocolate tasting, and that was outstanding. And a portion of their proceeds comes to Grow Some Good on a monthly basis. The Hawaii
Incredible
department.
what they do there, and that's one of those things that's foundational for the future of creating a sustainable economy here. Producing product. It's kind of a bummer with CBD right now. I started to read something on it. Is that more federal regulations that prevents CBD from going into productized seltzers? Because I'm trying not to drink alcohol, not really successfully, but non-alcoholic beers with CBD are very hard to come by, and work incredibly well. People don't realize this, but you can get a nice calming effect associated with a non-alcoholic CBD-based beer. And I wanted to have Maui Brewing produce something like that, and he's like, "I'm ready to go, but I'm locked down and bogged down with these, legal issues that we have to deal with." And is that so more of a federal issue, or is that a local issue?
I have no idea. I haven't been, baptized in that particular arena because I haven't, had the courage to go out and suggest growing, hemp or anything else like that with schools. So, until I don't know, it's kind of a bad look, it really is. So, yeah, so we're gonna refrain from that. So I really can't speak to that.
Just the association, even though, with hemp products, of course, there's the oils that come from it, very efficient use of fibers and, paper products and whatnot. Biomass is really important to a whole diverse agricultural plan. And of course, a product that's sustainable here. So I look forward to them working towards making it work. I actually tried to get in some of the companies that were here unsuccessfully. The people that I went with were not selected in when licenses and things were handed out. And I'm almost a little bit happy about that, just because it is difficult with the regulations they have. I invest in CBDD, which is a Denver product, but the funny thing is they have huge European holdings. And I've made a lot of money with that. And the thing that I'm looking forward to is the federal legalization, because when that happens, I mean, the stock is going to go through the roof. And more importantly, that choke that's right now on the productization is going to be released. And the demand right now, the supply is way outstripping the demand. And as soon as people are able to work across borders, both internationally and nationally, it's going to be massive. And that's one of the reasons I love CBDD, because it's not just an American product. It is a European and American product. The majority of their holdings is in Europe. And even though it's a CBD of Denver product. So I'm really excited to see where things are going to head, not just on the basis of having a sustainable economy, but also because monetarily I'm invested into this as well. So that being said, I always am trying to point out, proper utilization of resources here. And this is very divergent from what we've been talking about. But we have a very limited number of resources. And the biggest resource that we have on this island is tourism and the name of Maui. So people come here to Maui, and getting that money reinvested here is important. Right now, when the visitor industry comes here, those dollars go to hotels, and those hotels are, multinational corporations in the mainland. And even foreign governments own some of the hotels out here, and that goes even across outside the United States. The smaller developers that are here are pretty much Maui and Hawaii based, and that money gets reinvested into Hawaii. So what I want to see is there is a problem that we have to deal with. The cost of building is astronomical. Maui needs to work towards increasing infrastructure, making that the responsibility of the county as opposed to the developer, because if they don't, developers have to have ridiculously large projects and huge multi-decade timelines to develop. So what I want to see is I wanted to make it much more profitable to build affordable housing compared to luxury housing that's here, and use the tourism industry to do that. My proposal is basically to have special licenses for developers to build homes and have the county set what an affordable price is. $250,000 duplexes, $450,000 single family homes, as opposed to a starter home, is like the $850,000. It's way unattainable. It's just a ridiculous process that they have to go through. If they promise to sell it at that price, whatever the county deems a fair and equitable process to all of the Maui people, sell those only to people who live and work here, because we have a desperate need for nurses. We have a desperate need for doctors. We have, police, fire, teachers. They all need a place to live. If we concentrate on helping the people who live and work in Maui and give those opportunities to reinvest in property that are here, then those developers should be able to be more profitable building those properties. They should have a special license that utilizes our biggest resource, tourism, to rent those out, vacation rent those properties, and profit year after year on that for a limited portion of time. So say 3 to 5 years or something. That's at least like 100,000 net, I would assume. They would have to run the numbers, and that could be deducted from that sales price. So they make a larger profit. They're more motivated to develop. That money that they profit off gets reinvested in Hawaii. And then that net benefit, I mean, all of a sudden you're buying a house with hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity built in, and there'd be a process. One of the things that we did as a family here is help invest into Nahali o Maui, a community land trust here in Hawaii. And that is basically affordable housing in perpetuity. That's not the only solution. It should be a part of the process, but a lot of those people trade into the open market. And if people were to buy these homes, when they go to sell it in 15 years, 20 years or whatnot, that's a future, that's a savings, that's the ability to all of a sudden, oh man, I had a medical injury or long-term COVID, or broke my back, whatever. All of a sudden you have a safety net to live and not just die on the vine and be, a lot of these people that are living outside of their cars. There needs to be real thinking outside the box, not just perpetrating right now. One of the proposals, which I just did on my earlier show, was that they're taking away rights for vacation renters, and they're going to say, hey, if you sell your property, you're going to not be able to vacation rent it anymore. Under the Manitoia, they're just going to get rid of it. And I understand the idea, because they're trying to make more available inventory. The problem is it's just going to prevent people from selling, because why would they sell something that's going to be worth half the value when they can vacation rent and get a better return? So instead of having this tribalism, this fighting that we see all across our political divide, we need to work towards real solutions. So I hope people hear me out, and I appreciate you listening. I'll get down off my soapbox. I really appreciate everything that we've talked about, everything that you're doing, and I hope more and more people will donate to you. I really appreciate Jeff Bezos putting some money forward. Thank you to the mayor for the $100,000. Hopefully that'll become more and more as the years go on and the future political process. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just one more thing, if I might, just kind of throwing a shout out to some of our partner organizations. The Hawaii Department of Education is obviously up there, Maui Family YMCA, the University of Hawaii Maui College, Kamehameha Schools, Amua Discovery Garden, Big Brothers Big Sisters Mentor Center, Maui Farm, Hungry Homeless Heroes, Maui Nui Food Alliance, and the Hawaii Farm to School Network. So these are all partner organizations, as I mentioned, that we can't do this alone. We can't do this in a vacuum, and it takes the collective effort of all of us. So Please follow us on social media to learn more about our Farm to School Month campaign. It's coming up in October, and our end of year campaign beginning in November. So these are obviously financial ways that you can assist us. Donations are always appreciated. Once COVID starts to settle down, volunteer opportunities at the schools open up. In the meantime, we do have volunteer opportunities to help with fundraising, any kind of policy. Like, there's all kinds of things that make a nonprofit run, and people can do distance volunteering as well. So if you're interested, please reach out and connect with us there. And again, check us out on our website at www.growsomegood.org for more information on our programs and to learn again how to support our mission a little bit more. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Clint. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's been
Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate having you on the show today and being the director of Grow Some Good. I thank you for all your efforts. And this is Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate, broadcasting on Maui Real Estate Radio. You can go and listen to this or any show that we've created on a whole variety of topics, real estate related, and of course, stuff like this. You can go to mauirealestateradio.com or tune in 7 a.m. Mondays on the KAOI radio group, broadcasting at 11:10 a.m., 98.7 FM, 96.7 FM, and our friends on the west side at 95.5 FM. Yes, I'm cheating. I'm reading that. There's a lot of stations there. So thank you. Aloha.